I am Precious Chukudi. We begin with the front pages of the papers this morning, starting off with Vanguard. Vanguard is leading with ministerial list, 11 states to wait as Tinubu sends 28 nominees to Senate for confirmation. Right, the state Senate President receives a list of 28 nominees from Femi Gbajabiamila. Name of other nominees will come later, as says Gbajabiamila, as Wike, Umai, Erufai, Alake, Momo, Fagbemi, Pate, John Eno, others make list. Senate suspend holiday, begin screening Monday. Says screening will be thorough to look at experience, character, personality, others. Why Tinubu didn't attach a portfolio to ministerial nominee list, and that's coming from presidency. Says nominees comprises technocrats, politicians. Hint on restructuring of ministries. All right, so we can see a photo story showing subsidy Ogun government begin conversion of vehicles. Subsidy protest, stop blackmailing us, NLC tells the federal government. Russian summit, Nigeria missing as Africa agrees nuclear energy as alternative source of power. You can read that on page 8. On page 37, Women's World Cup, Super Falcons shock Australia in 5 goals trailer. Stories above, we have bandits kill officer, 5 soldiers, policeman, 20 vigilantes in Zamfara ambush. You can read that on page 9. Court rejects DSS fresh request to detain Emefiele for another 14 days. You can read that on page 9 still. On page 8, NJ Institute annual memorial lecture in honor of Jack Conde. Max airplane conveying Nigerian pilgrims trapped in Niger Republic. Lastly, on front page of Vanguard, the Super CSC threatens to delist 100,000 inactive companies. All right, let's take a look at the Guardian newspaper. The Guardian is leading with summer travel and inflation, overpriced airfares, 795 naira to a dollar exchange rate for closed holiday trips for average Nigerians. You can read more on the big story on pages 4 and 5. DSS silent over alleged arrest of former aviation minister Sirika. Strike notice, NLC in contempt of court, federal government declares. On page 20, police re-strategize as IPOP declares 2 week sit at home in Southeast. Renewed hope ministers, 11 states await nominations amid intrigues, lobbying. Virginia recounts for the 3 month incarceration without trial. And let's take a look at the Nation newspaper. The Nation is leading with presidency, why Tinubu picked Wike, Erufai, others. Right, it says Senate begins screening of 28 ministerial nominees Monday. More nominees in incoming days. 11 states yet to have slots. And we can also see a list of the nominees. Stories above, 1,200 Nigerian youths perished in Mediterranean, says NIS. You can read more on page 6. Shelf strike plan, police caution labor. Security breach a concern. House of Rep gets 134 standing committees. You can read that on page 5. Last year on the front page of the Nation, Uzodinma to security, save Southeast from seat at home. All right, let's take a look at the Punch newspaper. The Punch is leading with El-Rufai, Wike, other nominees face Senate screening Monday. Rider says the president will create new ministries, form full cabinet in 2 weeks, and that's coming from Gbajabiamila. National Assembly awaits other states' nominees. PDP faults Wike's nomination. Lampoon's Tinubu over list. You can see a photo story showing the list, the nominees, ministerial nominees. On page 17, reduce government borrowing from CBN. World Bank tells Nigeria. Stories above, subsidy removal. Tinubu begs Nigerians to persevere more. On page 27, NMA demands MOU as the federal government okays 25,000 naira doctor's allowance. Margaret Benson Daosa, matriarch of Nigerian Pentecostalism. You can read that on page 5. And that's all we can take on the front pages of the papers. Join us after the break. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. If you're just joining still today in the news on Vanguard Live, I am Precious Chikudi, and joining me to talk about some of the stories on the front page this morning is our correspondent John Bosco Agbakuru. He's going to be telling us more about the ministerial list. John Bosco, can you hear me?
Yeah, good morning.
Yes. All right.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. All right. Tell us about the forwarded list of ministerial nominees. I mean, we have 28 names out now, and we hear that there are like 13 more to come. Just tell us.
Yesterday we recall that the Chief of Staff to the President, Right Honorable Femi Bajabiamila, submitted the list of ministerial nominees to the Senate. The Senate has the responsibility, to clear and confirm nominees to make up the cabinet of the federal government. You recall also that in the last amendment, the Constitution gave the President 60 days from the days of his inauguration, to submit the names of ministers to be, the government is expecting, is hoping to work with. And so yesterday was the 60th day since the Mr. President, Aswati Bola Ahmed Tinubu was inaugurated. And to fulfill the constitutional obligation, he submitted the names of 28 members. Already you know that based on the constitutional provision, every state is supposed to have a minister, And in the last administration, last dispensation, we had about 44, 46, ministers. So yesterday, when the Chief of Staff to the President, Femi Bajabiamila, presented the list to the Senate, after he was asked, confronted with the questions, to talk about, the people that he submitted their names to and why government, failed to attach portfolios to those names so that people will be able to judge whether really they can perform the work. So he was relying on the existing tradition that, before now, there is no portfolio attached, to, the names submitted to the National Assembly. But he himself also acknowledged the fact that it is very necessary, to submit, portfolio so that Nigerians will be able to look at these people, the names, and then their characters, and what they represent, and whether they will be able, to carry out the particular function that they will be assigned to. So he now said that maybe after now, going forward, maybe next time, the president will be able to, submit the list, the names with, the portfolio. He also said that based on the names, so far, given, that they are Nigerians made up of technocrats and politicians, people who really can help, the government to move forward. And that any of them can occupy any position except maybe the position of Attorney General, which may be a special position for a lawyer. Then he also said that maybe in the next few days, about 12 or 13 names will also be submitted. Based on the constitutional provision, all the states have to be represented. Every state, all the 13 states, including Abuja, will have a name, a person, representing the state. So because yesterday what was submitted was only 28 names, he said in a few days, another 12 or 13 names will be submitted, to the National Assembly, for screening and confirmation. He also said that some of the people that are not, favored now should hold on. While also, even the numbers, when you look at the ministries, remember that in the previous administration, we have the substantive minister and you have the minister of state. Even though at the validatory section of last administration, the minister of state for labor and employment, Francis Kayamo, SAN, told the former president that it is an aberration to have a minister of state, that the constitution does not even support it. But yesterday, Femi Bajabiamila, said that government may restructure the ministries, which means, that maybe more ministries will be created, to accommodate some of these nominees.
Okay, all right. So as opposed to having a lot of young people and even more technocrats, people are wondering why the president's ministerial list is, dominated by former governors, ex-senators and what have you. Can you speak more on that?
The former speaker and the current chief of staff said, the list is made up of, he says, the balanced list with politicians and technocrats. Even if you are bringing technocrats, really, there are people that have, worked hard to bring the government, to put the government in place. That's the politicians themselves. They also know the political terrain for the president, to navigate. So these people will be there. Some of the governors, did their best as governors, even though some critics, are of the opinion that some of the governors wasted the resources available to them. But still, some of them performed creditably, in office. So for Mr. President, in his wisdom, to bring technocrats and politicians, I think it is a balance. If areas that require politics or politicking, the politicians amongst them will, intervene. The areas that require the technocrats, the technocrats themselves will also take charge. So I think it is a balance based on what the chief of staff to the president said.
All right. Earlier in the week, one of the things that we heard was that the reason for the least delay was because the president was thinking of how he intends to accommodate, some members of the PDP just to show some form of national unity. But we haven't really seen that in the names that have been released so far.
When he also noticed that on the list, the former governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike, is nominated. I mean, Nyesom Wike is still, to the best of my knowledge, he's still a member of the PDP, even though he was one of the then, group of 5 governors who go by the appellation integrity governors, that opposed, the presidential candidate of their party, that's Atiku Abubakar. He's still a member of the PDP, and I could remember that he once swore that there is nothing that can make him to leave his party, the PDP, that if he was going to fight, he was going to fight in PDP. So I think maybe that's one of the fulfillment of trying to bring in some of these people who are not members or who are not card-carrying members of the All Progressives Congress, which is the ruling part.
Also, speaking about Governor Wike, we also heard in this same week that some, members of the party were already threatening that they would leave the party because of the things they have done to, help the president get his presidential bid. What can you say as regards that?
It's a matter of choice. Mr. President, in his wisdom, believes that Nyesom Wike played a prominent role in ensuring his victory or getting up to 25% or more in Rivers State, which is the condition for a person, to win an election. And also, some APC stalwarts in Rivers State, claim that Nyesom Wike made the place so hostile for them to operate, so hostile for them to function. President in his wisdom has, brought, submitted the name of Nyesom Wike. I do know that Nyesom Wike used to have a running battle with somebody like Senator Magnus Abe and co. And some really, as you said, as you notice, have threatened, to dump the party. If eventually somebody who they claimed, frustrated them from operating is now being given a prominent position in the government being ruled by the APC. So we are just watching and waiting to see what will really be the end of the story in Rivers State, especially in the Rivers APC.
All right, moving on. Let's touch on this subsidy protest. Now, the Nigerian Labour Congress has warned that they've told the federal government to stop blackmailing them, in terms of and misrepresenting the law. Can you tell us more about that? Because we've been talking about, the current conditions of Nigerians and the untold hardship Nigerians have been passing through, and what exactly is Labour doing? Tell us more.
Okay, I think the Solicitor General of the Federation and the Permanent Secretary, Minister of Justice, Mrs. Beatrice Jediaba, came with this issue of, saying that the Nigerian Labour Congress lacks the constitutional right, to embark on protest or strike, as the case may be, based on the ongoing case in the National Industrial Court. But the NLC also, while replying, just telling the government, through the Solicitor General of the Federation, that the case in the court is different from the reason for their protest. You recall that when the president, after his inauguration speech on May 29, declared that subsidy is gone, the next day, the price of a liter of fuel, which was 190, 195 naira, was adjusted to 500, over 500 naira. And this jolted many Nigerians, including the workers. And they decided to, mobilize to embark on strike, but the federal government went to industrial court to get an injunction to, stop them from embarking on strike. And after that, there was a meeting. A president set up what we call a steering committee on palliative, because they want now to look at some of the effects of this, the removal of fuel subsidy. So the NLC then was constrained because of the injunction. But in this case now, some days ago, after the Central Working Committee, non-government has again come to increase, despite the hardship Nigerians are facing, come to increase again from over 500 to 617 naira. The NLC felt that no, the hardship is getting too much, and they now started mobilizing. So they directed all their affiliate unions, all the branches, to start to mobilize for a national protest. They call it a national protest, not a strike, on August 2. But the federal government, through the Solicitor General and Public Secretary Minister of Justice, is thinking otherwise, believing that the protest, the proposed protest, is unconstitutional because there is an injunction. And the Labour is saying that the injunction is not a perpetual injunction. Besides, the injunction was on 500 and something naira per liter, and not even the present increment, being met. So the Labour is saying that, government is trying to, blackmail them and twist them, not minding the hardship. Some of the policies it has introduced is causing many Nigerians.
Hmm. Of course, you know that the federal government was saying something like yesterday that the reason why they've been unable to roll out palliatives is because they are trying not to make mistakes. Do you have anything to say about that?
I do know that the government team and the organized labor comprising Nigeria, the leadership of Nigeria Labour Congress and the leadership of Trade Union Congress, they are meeting with government today because there are some areas of disagreement on some of the palliatives the government has rolled out. And though the Labour refused to mention those areas, but they are meeting today to consider all the options, presented by both sides. So I think it is today, towards the end of today, now people will know actually the direction both the government and the labor unions are going.
Hmm. All right, thank you so much, John Bosco, for that report.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's take Mr. and Mrs. before we go. And Mrs. seems to be speaking. She says, I don't like the way you're treating me in this house, and I'm getting upset. And Mr. replies, says, meaning what? And Mrs. says, up and set to deal with the situation. Mrs. needs to calm down because I understand that things are quite tough, and you need to breathe. Don't suffocate yourself. I mean, that's what we're told to do. You know. Also, remember that you can equally like, share, and subscribe on all our social media platforms showing on your screen. Find out today's stories. Go to our website www.vanguardindia.com. Find out more. I am Precious Chukudi, and thank you.